You are listening to the Body Charge podcast, and I'm your host, Sandy Sanderson. Welcome to the Body Charge podcast. Today's topic is what's going on with the fertility rate. The total fertility rate in Australia over the past 30 years has slowly dropped from 1.86 in 1993 to 1.5 children in 2023 per family. It's a similar trend in other Western countries. Putting aside lifestyle choices and economic pressures that cause families to have less children or no children intentionally, there's also a growing trend of inability to have children. My special guest today is Jaclyn Downs, a functional nutrigenomics and fertility practitioner and author. So welcome aboard, Jaclyn. Lovely to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so this is an interesting topic, very interesting, because in my time when I was 20 something and having babies, I really didn't think about it. You just sort of did it. And the main focus in the 90s and earlier was you really have to be careful not to have children because you don't want to have them when you can't afford to have them. And so, there was a big focus on contraception. But now it's kind of changing quite a lot. So our newer, younger generations cannot automatically assume that they'll just fall pregnant when they want to, because, it's more common now for it not to happen. Just, it's not like turning a tap on and off, is it? What could be causing this kind of trend?
So there's a term that I have in my book. I have an academically published book called Enhancing Fertility Through Functional Medicine, using nutrigenomics to solve unexplained infertility. And in there, I say that I want to make the term oxidative stress a common household term because everybody's experiencing it to some degree at some time or another. Sometimes for people, it's just chronic and ongoing. So oxidative stress is damage to the cell. That's damage to the cellular structure, but also damage to the information that the cell contains. And so when I was writing my book, I wanted to know definitively, does oxidative stress cause inflammation or does inflammation cause oxidative stress? And I combed through the PubMed and Google Scholar, and it's one feeds the other.
Yes, and so it's a negative feedback loop. Absolutely.
Sure is.
And that makes it complex and confusing, doesn't it? Because it's not linear.
Yes. So, and there's so many factors that are causing oxidative stress. So a lot of times when you say stress, people just think of emotional stress, job stress, relationship stress. And that is one form of stress that causes oxidative stress.
Now, can you explain oxidative stress for those who are not quite au fait with the scientific term? What's the difference at a cellular level? How does the cell get stressed and what does it mean?
Okay, so again, oxidative stress is damage to the cell, the information it contains and the physical structure. And so emotional stress, physical stress, environmental stress, toxic stress, all of those contribute to oxidative stress in one way or another. And what oxidative stress essentially is not having enough antioxidants to fight the free radicals. Yep. That's simply what it is. Now, if you want to get biochemical, it's an unpaired electron, and antioxidants donate an electron to stop the cascade of trying to steal an electron from a neighbor. But essentially, it's damaging the cell, and our health, and especially our fertility, really all comes down to cellular health, because our cells make our tissues, and our tissues make our glands, and our glands make and tissue makes our glands and our organs, which make our systems. And so if we don't have healthy cells, everything else is not going to be healthy. But also the body needs to feel that it has enough resources and enough energy for its daily life in order for it to know that it has enough energy and resources to grow a whole nother human being.
You have to have a surplus, the ability to have a surplus in energy and resources to grow this other person. Yes. And yes, so if there's if you're scraping the bottom of the barrel and there's barely enough for you, how are you going to have a surplus? And so that makes sense because nature always has fail-safe mechanisms. And
Yes.
if someone is robbing their own system and doesn't have enough, then the system doesn't work. And it makes perfect sense.
Yes, I say in my book that you can't pour from an empty cup. And that's why I really, really emphasize preconception preparedness and optimization, because when you get pregnant, if you're lucky enough to get pregnant, you have that first trimester morning sickness typically, and you don't want to eat anything but crackers and bread. And so you want to make sure that you have those nutritional resources to fuel growing this whole nother human being. And I state in my book that people spend way more time and energy and effort preparing their baby's nursery than they did preparing their own body to grow a whole nother human being.
That's a good point. Yes, absolutely. It's not a superficial thing. It starts from the inside out, doesn't it?
Yes,
So,
and it goes far beyond just forcing hormones into specific ranges. So the whole, back to your question with what could be causing this trend of functional infertility, really comes down to the health of the cell and things causing oxidative stress. And like I said, that's your emotional stress, that's physical stress, that could be radiation, that could be living in mold, that the toxins that we're exposed to. And so in my book, I boldly state that I feel that this day and age, having proper detoxification ability is just as important, if not more important, than having a nutritious diet and a good nutritional status, because we pass our toxic legacy on to our children. And so that if we're lucky enough to get pregnant, we will pass those toxins in utero and through breast milk. But toxins are known to cause infertility, and they're known to cause miscarriage and preeclampsia and premature birth and all of that stuff as well. So I do feel that the toxins are a huge contributing factor to the oxidative stress that's causing the fertility
yeah,
epidemic.
it's about the balance, isn't it? So the human body is quite miraculous and very efficient and has a capacity to get rid of stuff that shouldn't be there. So if we inadvertently get exposed to something that's not good for us, depending on the amount, of course, the body detects it and eliminates it quickly. But it's the question of overload, isn't it? So if the stress builds upon stress and don't have a chance to recover from the stress, you start to draw on your resources, so the stored resources, until that gets to the bottom of the barrel. So you can put up with stress for a while and you feel that you can deal with it and it's not doing too much. And there's a kind of false illusion, a delusion that you can keep going with this kind of lifestyle forever. And it's just not possible. So you get a certain period of time to use up your stored resources. And then there's the straw that breaks the camel's back. Then there's like something that happens, which may not seem like a big thing, but because it's been building up to an empty system, you don't need much to push you over into that stage of inflammation. So how does the oxidative stress, once you get to that tipping point, lead into inflammation and disease like endometriosis? There's all sorts of inflammation diseases that can move to any part of the body. You can have inflammation in the brain even. So it's a really core fundamental element of health. If we want to know and learn how to be well and healthy, whether we want to have a baby or not, I mean, the same principles are involved. To be your best, feel great, to sleep well, to get the most out of life, to be productive, we need to make sure that our vehicle, our body, is in tip-top condition. And it all comes down to this balancing system between the oxidants, so that's your used up waste products, and your antioxidants that neutralize and help you get rid of the bad stuff. Take out the garbage. Is that right? Like I made it very simple, but
Yes, essentially that is exactly what it is. Yes, we need to make sure that we have enough antioxidants to fight off all of the free radicals that are being generated from all of these stressors that we are encountering. And our poor bodies, our poor livers we're not designed to handle the amount of toxins that we are exposed to just in our homes alone, and then in
Yeah.
our cars and in the environment and the industrial processing and on the food processing and all of that. And so it's way more than we were designed to deal with. And so we have to proactively
Yeah.
support detoxification with, and part of detoxification is nutrient intake. So it
And,
is.
and not to have the chemicals. You read your labels. Don't eat junk packaged foods that have a lot of invisible toxic elements included. And you can't read the name on the label. It's really fake food, isn't it? We really need to go back to the fundamentals and prepare raw food from scratch and be in control of what goes into our mouth.
Yeah, that's what we evolved on, just food from the earth. And that's what we put into our bodies 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. And that's what our bodies are designed to use and thrive on. And so when we're adding in all of these toxic chemicals and toxins, and also not putting in enough nutrients, that's when the scale gets tipped rather quickly in this modern day.
Yeah, especially the more stress you're under, the more you pee out excessive magnesium. And then that's the catch-22, because the lower the magnesium gets in the reserves of the cell, the more sensitive we become. We can't deal with stress. Little things become big things. And then the experience of stress and anxiety grows. And so the more that happens, the more you end up losing more magnesium. So it's a downward spiral.
It
So
is.
it
And
takes a lot to turn that around.
it does. And magnesium is involved in it's a cofactor in so many enzymatic reactions. So, like I talk about in my book, and I have a mini course too. Every single gene in our body makes a reaction happen. Or I guess I should say, every single reaction that takes place in our body is dictated by a gene. And so the gene holds the blueprint, but we need nutritional cofactors like spark plugs in order to make sure that enzyme can do its job. And magnesium and your B vitamins are just everywhere in these pathways. So
Yes,
magnesium is critical for health.
it is. I learned this about 16 years ago because it solved my own health issues with heart arrhythmias. But I also didn't have very good digestion because of low thyroid. So I found that transdermal absorption worked very well for me, and I was able to overcome those health issues and adopt daily transdermal magnesium. So we developed a product range of sprays, lotions, creams to suit all skin types. It's a really lovely skincare product. At the same time, it's giving you more magnesium than the tablets. So this replaces what traditionally we may have got through our food before it became adulterated and genetically modified and changed. Not that I'm very conscious about not putting GMO if I know about it in my mouth. Try to avoid it at all costs. But it's a constant vigil, isn't it? We have to like totally pay attention constantly of our environment, because even people on fresh, healthy, organic food diets can still suffer a lot from stress if they're doing shift work, if they're in an environment all day like offices with computers and printers and lots of EMF, and they're in a 5G soup. All these electromagnetic fields are a background stress. You may not even be aware of it, but by the end of the day, you just feel awful. You might develop headaches. These are all toxic symptoms of toxicity, where the body's not able to push out the waste products that it's saving up from these stresses. And then they cause what I call traffic jams in the body, blocks in the tubes, and blocks how the electrical system translates and moves, so that your signals don't work very well. The whole magnetic system in the body, the nervous system, needs conductivity. And if you start to get these roadblocks because the waste isn't being removed, then your organs aren't talking to the brain and vice versa. Things aren't working the way they should. So everything starts to get very slow. Your metabolism drops because magnesium is fundamental in that electrical system supply. It makes the proteins, which are the enzymes, the collagen, the elastin, your bones, like everything is made from the proteins. And to synthesize the proteins, that's to join those amino acids together after you're able to digest them and, take the protein and make it into individual amino acids. Your body has to reassemble them into your own body's proteins. That requires a lot of magnesium. So people don't realize it's like the juice, the electrical juice, the power supply.
And what's really interesting, woo-woo is scientific literature there. It is labeled on certain things in other countries, but there is a gene. It's called your CACNA1C gene. And it has to do with your calcium channels, and calcium and magnesium are antagonistic. And so if you have variants in this CACNA1C gene, then you're going to need even more magnesium to help keep that balance.
Or if you have kidney issues and you're peeing out even more because the kidneys aren't efficiently recycling what they should. So to some extent, we can recycle magnesium, but if the kidneys aren't doing their job properly, then that's another factor for us to lose excessive amounts. Or if you push your body hard as an athlete, you perspire a lot, you're losing minerals from your skin along with the sweat. So that all of that needs to be replaced for you to recover properly. We have a bank account, right? A cellular bank account, and we can't keep robbing from that bank account.
And also there are genes related to magnesium transport, magnesium receptors. And so you could just be born with some genetic variants there. So you're already at a disadvantage for a healthy magnesium status. And then you throw in the daily stressors and the lowered soil nutrient dense quality and your just stress and all of that. And so everybody has a different set point for how much they need, but it's pretty common that there's so many things that deplete magnesium these days that it's a very, very common deficiency.
So getting to the genomic part of what you do, how does the excessive chronic stress finally impact how the genes express themselves? Because, nothing is set in stone. It's malleable. It's a system that can change from one setting. I call it like a washing machine dial. You can change from one setting to another setting. But what makes all that happen? And how do you help people change back to the good settings of their genes?
Right. Okay. So there's epigenetics and nutrigenomics. So epigenetics is, so we're born with the DNA that we are going to have for the rest of our lives. And it's really fascinating with identical twins. And I actually have a picture of some identical twins that were separated at birth. And both of the girls, they were Korean and they were both adopted by different families in the United States, never knew about each other, and then found out about each other like 20 years later through 23andMe, and they don't even look like sisters. I have a picture of them in my book, and they have the exact same DNA, but it's their diet, it's their exposures, it's their stressors, it's their physical activity, where they live. Yeah. And so the epigenetics are what changes the expression of your genes. Now, nutrigenomics is the study of how your genes influence your health and how your state of health influences your genetic expression. So it's bidirectional.
Wow. So how do you assess someone, or how do you help them if let's say they've had inflammation, it might have been endometriosis, some kind of health issue to do with the reproductive system, and they're ready to have a baby, they've got everything set up, but it's not working. They may have been on the pill for a number of years, and that can cause a problem, I believe, to become fertile again. There's a phase lag. So how do you, and there are many reasons or potentials that could be inhibiting that process. So how do you work out with an individual? What do you do with them when they come to you for help?
So I start out with a very meticulously detailed intake form. I'm asking about poop, sleep, periods, dental history, the house you grew up in, if you've had mold exposure, all kinds of stuff, skin issues. Do you get hangry? So I'm asking all of these questions, a lot of questions about your poop too, all the characteristics, so that I can put all of these moving pieces together to get a better understanding of,
Profile.
five people could come to me with fertility challenges or repeated miscarriage, but it could be five different reasons why.
Mm.
So the more points of information that I have, the more I can help to get targeted. And then if
Yeah.
you put lab work on top of that and genetics on top of that, you can have all arrows pointing in the same direction to get a really good educated guess as to what's going on
Oh, that
and
sounds
how
really
to support it.
precise.
It is. It
Yeah.
is.
What kind of lab work would that be? Blood
I
tests?
really, yes, I like functional lab work. So I mean, I do always welcome any lab work, especially just your plain old good CBC, CMP, lipids, complete thyroid panel, iron, ferritin, all of that. But as far as functional lab testing goes, I really love the urine organic acids test. We can see so many things about how well your mitochondria are making energy. Because remember, we need cellular health in order to know that we have enough energy to grow a baby. Plus, it is only the mother, as far as we know, that passes on mitochondrial DNA to her child. And so mitochondrial health is, there's probably about 7 or 8 markers on this test for mitochondrial health and how well your cells are making ATP. It looks at B vitamin status. So you could get a B12 test with your blood, right? And that shows how much B12 is in your blood, especially if you're eating meat and there's going to be enough B12 in there, but that's only showing you what's stuck in the blood. It doesn't tell you how much is actually getting into the
Into the
cell.
cells.
So your
The
urine is like your car's exhaust. It tells you what the body has used and is now metabolized and is now getting rid of. So it's nice to cross-reference what's in the blood with what's coming out in the urine, so you can truly see if you have a deficiency if you're looking at B vitamins that are coming out in the urine. It also looks at yeast and fungal markers, neurotransmitter metabolism. So one test gives us a lot of information. It's a snapshot of what's going on metabolically in your body. But like any other functional testing, you should get a baseline test and follow-up testing, whereas genetics, it's one test. Your genes are never going to change. Yes, the expression of your genes can change, but if you had a baby and you gave that baby, you tested their spit on the day they were born, and then 80 years later, you test that person's genes again with a spit test, it's going to be the same exact information.
Yeah,
So
wow.
it's worth every penny because it's only one test as opposed to needing to follow up
Yeah.
and retest.
Yeah, that's good that you do a number of things because it gives you a better, well-rounded view of what's happening, and more of a 360-degree aspect rather than just from one particular perspective, which is
Yes.
very,
And
very refreshing these days.
yes, I don't often run, and a lot of people, they think, oh, fertility, let me get a hormone test, right? But the
Mm.
hormones are just messengers. And so I like to look at the urine organic acids test or even a stool test before a hormone test, because you're coming to me because your hormones are out of whack. And yeah, sure, we can measure them and see what they're doing now, but I want to know why the hormones are in the ranges they are. Are you exposed to mold and mycotoxins, or are you exposed to a bunch of endocrine disrupting chemicals that are causing your hormones to be in these different ranges than they should be? And then once we get through those and correcting the root causes, then we can measure your hormones and see if they are in an ideal spot or where they would be without any extraneous factors affecting your hormone levels. So I
Yeah.
don't usually run a hormone panel right off the bat.
Yeah. And the poop's very important. The microbiome is the core of where it all happens because it's the center of your immune system, your detox system.
Yep.
We rely heavily on our good beneficial microbes for digestion, for detoxification, for maintaining the lining of the gut. So
Yes, yes,
many
super
things.
important.
So there's a big problem often in pregnancy where the mother can't eliminate very well, where she's got a problem with detox. Then the blood pressure can build up and the edema can, build up, which is often also a sign of magnesium deficiency.
Yep.
And a very safe way to supplement without doing it orally is the transdermal method. that I
Agreed.
talked about before. And it's very relaxing, calming, soothing. And when the mother's soothed, the baby is soothed as well, because that baby's sharing all of those sentiments, whether you're happy, sad, stressed, whatever's going through the mother's going through the baby. The more we can care for ourselves better, the better it is for that child inside.
100% agree with you.
Mm.
Yes.
So, as we're coming to a close, I'd love you to share with people where they can reach you if they want to read what you've written, your books, connect with you, perhaps have a consultation. Where should they go?
Sure. They can go to my website at jaclyndowns.com, JACLYNDOWNS. And I'm also on Instagram. I'm sort of late to the game because I've been working with a lot of Amish and Mennonite people in my area, and they don't, word of mouth literally travels by word of mouth.
Yeah.
But I figured I wanted to expand and share my information. So I am on Instagram at Functional Genomics is my handle.
Yeah, fantastic. Because people may be feeling frustrated. They've already covered some of those bases, but there may be just one thing missing that they're not doing, they haven't looked at, they haven't addressed. So it can be very helpful to get that outside objective opinion, and some coaching as well, if things need to be changed in the lifestyle and how we do things and how we live. It's a really good foundation, not only for fertility and pregnancy, but for the rest of your life, really.
Yep. Great for longevity, cellular health for sure.
Yes,
And
anti-aging.
yep. And as far as I think that knowing what your genetic blueprint has to say can really take out a lot or answer a lot of the puzzling questions and take out the guesswork. So for instance, I talk about this client in my book. She had like 9 or 10 miscarriages when she came to me, and we got her periods nice and healthy and uneventful, really boring, regular. And so that was great. But she did have another miscarriage. So then we went on to do her genetic testing and interpretation. And she had never said anything about any kind of having any allergies or histamine issues, but there were a couple of genes in her histamine pathway that were very, very much more variated than the mean population to compare her to in the software of about 60,000 people. And it just wouldn't have really come across my radar if we hadn't seen her genes, because there was no indication, no symptoms. But histamine, as I have a whole chapter in my book on histamine, it's very, very necessary for implantation. And so she was having these early miscarriages. And so that's where the genetics can really shine and shine a light on areas that you would not have even considered looking before.
Yeah, so it helps you to balance it better, or compensate rather, for what's not average or the same as most people. It's
Yes, because it's functional genomics. So
yes.
this isn't like a genetic test for carrier status for things like muscular dystrophy. This is functional genetics. These are genes that you can support the functioning of.
Yes. So you know how to live your life better. You know what makes you an individual, and what you need to do that might be different to the average person or the person next to you. You may, go out to a restaurant and go, I can't have that particular meal but I can have this one. It's just getting to learn and know who you are better, which includes your genomics, right?
Yes,
That's
and
your
I think
blueprint.
yes, for sure. And I think that's your genes play a big part in why veganism can work long term for some people, but not others. And I've made certain posts about this on Instagram where, for instance, there is a gene called your BCMO1, which converts your beta carotene into retinol. And we need retinol for so many things, our night vision, for fertility. It's essential for fertility, skin health. And if you have a lot of variants in this BCMO1 gene, you're not likely going to be converting plant-based beta carotene from your orange, your carrots and
Yep.
apricots and all these orange foods. You're not going to be converting that into the type of vitamin A that our body requires and needs. And so you could have a very large deficiency, whereas your best friend that's vegan with you is totally fine and their vitamin A level is fine because they don't have any genetic variants that hinder that conversion.
Yes, and there are other genes like MTHFR, and how well do we detox from certain elements, from foods, from metabolism? How do we get rid of stuff?
Yeah,
It changes.
Like you said, the body has multiple backup. So the more important that somebody is, the more important that a process is to take place in the body, the more backup routes and checks and balances it has. And so we have numerous detoxification pathways, and a lot of people just focus on methylation, but we have 6 phase 2 liver detox pathways and a phase 1 liver detox pathway, and there's genes, multiple genes, plethora of genes in all of those. And so it does drive me crazy when people just focus on MTHFR or just focus on one pathway. But I'm not discounting the importance of MTHFR methylation. It's just those genes, unless it's like I said, muscular dystrophy, no gene works in isolation. They all have upstream and downstream things. Yeah. So
it's more like a web.
Yes,
exactly. A web of interaction.
Mm-hmm. But if you can have, like, you have a genetic variant, but you could have another genetic variant upstream that also slows down the production of something. So if you have slow degradation and slow production, that evens each other out. But it's when you have fast production and slow degradation, or vice versa, that the problems arise.
Then you need to get more precise about how to rebalance that. It's always trying to find that balance beam, isn't it?
Yes, and knowing your genetics really, really helps to get you there a lot faster. Saves you money and time, and in the case of fertility, a lot of heartache as well.
That's been so informative and interesting. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this interview today. I'm sure people will get a lot out of it. And also,
I've really enjoyed speaking with you as well.
Yeah, and if you're or our audience is interested in learning about transdermal magnesium, I have a huge resource on our website, electramagnesium.com.au. That's with a K, Elektra, magnesium.com.au, where there are videos, podcasts, articles, scientific links. So we've got everything to do with what you need to know about magnesium, and links to scientific articles for those that want to dig even deeper. So thank you so much. And you have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye. I hope you liked this conversation and will share it with others. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to listen to other Body Charge conversations, click like, subscribe, the bell icon, and click all notifications. Subscribe to our newsletter to get updates on blogs, podcasts, videos, and magnesium special offers at electramagnesium.com.au. Relax, recharge, and recover.